السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. ازيكم يا جريد 5؟ النهاردة ان شاء الله هنبدأ مع بعض في منهج الترم التاني لمادة الساينس، وهنبدأ مع بعض يونت 1 ليسن 1 فريكشن فورس. في ليسن النهاردة ان شاء الله احنا نتكلم عن حاجة اسمها فريكشن فورس. احنا دلوقتي عايزين نفهم يعني ايه فريكشن فورس، ايه التعريف بتاع الفريكشن فورس. عشان نفهم يعني ايه فريكشن فورس نعمل مع بعض activity. When you ride a bike and pedaling directly, bike moving, but if you stop pedaling, the bike slowing down until stop. The bike stop because of why? Because there is a friction force between bike and ground. Again, the bike stop because there is a friction force between bike and the ground. This friction force causes the body to slow down and stop. طيب احنا كده فهمنا ان البايك stop because of friction force، لان الفريكشن force causes the body to slowing down and stop. Friction force arises between two surfaces in contacting or touching. Again, friction force arising between two surfaces in contacting or touching. طيب احنا درسنا قبل كده ان any force has a direction. So what is the direction of friction force? What is the direction of friction force? Friction force always acts or affects in the opposite direction of motion. Again, friction force always acts or affecting in the opposite direction of motion. بمعنى ايه؟ بمعنى لو كان الدايركشن اوف الموشن is this direction، لو كان الموشن فورس بتتحرك في الدايركشن ده، يبقى friction force acts in the opposite direction of motion، يبقى الفريكشن فورس بتتحرك في الاتجاه opposite direction. طيب نراجع تاني على اللي احنا قلناه. احنا قلنا البايك slowing down because of friction force between bike and ground. قلنا كمان ان الفريكشن فورس cause the object to slow down and stop. كمان درسنا وعرفنا ان friction force arises between two surfaces in contacting or touching. وخدنا ان any force has a direction, so the direction of a friction force acts in the opposite direction of motion. طيب من اللي احنا درسناه دلوقتي وقلناه عايزين نطلع ال definition of friction force. What is meant by friction force? What is meant by friction force? Friction force, it is the force between two surfaces in contact that acts in the opposite direction of motion. Again, the force between two surfaces in contact that acts in the opposite direction of motion. Cause the object to slow down and stop. تاني مع بعض كده. Friction force means what? It is the force between two surfaces in contact that acts in the opposite direction of motion. تاني, it is the force between two surfaces in contact that acts in the opposite direction of motion. Now we will study the factors that affect on friction force. Factors that affect on friction force. Number one, the type of the surface material. Number one, the type of surface material. Surface material has two types which are تاني مع بعض. احنا قلنا surface material has two types which are smooth surface material. Number two, rough surface material. تاني, surface material has two types which are smooth surface material and rough surface material. Now we will study the relation between each one of them with friction force. احنا دلوقتي هندرس study the relation between each one of them with friction force. Number one, smooth surface material. Smooth surface material. Smooth surface material decrease the friction force. So the body move long distance. Again, smooth surface material decrease friction force and the body moves long distance. But rough surface material decrease friction force. Increase friction force. Rough surface material increase friction force, so the body move long short distance. again تاني مع بعض. smooth surface material decrease friction force البادي move long distance. طيب rough surface material increase friction force and the body move short distance. طيب نعيد تاني مع بعض. احنا قلنا ايه؟ there are some factors that affect on friction force. number one, surface material, the type of the surface material. All the surface material has two types which are smooth surface material, rough surface material. قلنا دلوقتي now we will study the relation between each one of them with friction force. أول حاجة number one, smooth surface material. Smooth surface material do what? Decrease the friction force and the body moves long distance. طيب rough surface material increase friction force and the body moves short distance. Friction force not only found between solid surface. Again, friction force not only found between solid surface but also found when objects are moving through air or water. Again, friction not only found between solid material or object but also found when objects are moving through air or water. Friction force that found or resulting from the movement of an object through air is called air resistance. تاني مع بعض كده. Friction force between object and the air called air resistance. Friction force that found between or resulting from the movement of an object through air is called air resistance. For an example, as you run in the open, ride a bike. Number 3, car motion. When the car moves at high speed, air resistance increase, but low speed decrease air resistance. بمعنى ايه؟ If the car moves at high speed, air resistance increase. طب لو كان low speed, air resistance decrease. Factor number 2 that affect on friction force, surface area. The surface area. Surface area has a direct relation with friction force. Again, surface area or the surface area has a direct relation with friction force. بمعنى ايه؟ By increasing surface area, friction force increase. Decrease surface area, friction force decrease. Again, increase surface area, increase friction force. Decrease surface area, decrease friction force. But the streamline shape decrease surface area and decrease friction force. Again, streamline shape decrease surface area and decrease friction force. نراجع مع بعض اللي احنا قلناه تاني. By increasing the speed of the moving object, friction force increase and vice versa. بمعنى ايه؟ increase the speed, increase friction force. decrease the speed, decrease friction force. طيب surface area increase surface area increase friction force, decrease surface area decrease friction force. but الستريم shape بيعمل ايه؟ decrease surface area and decrease friction force. For an example, the bat extend its wings or parachutist open parachute as they landing. Why? To increase the surface area and increase the air resistance. Again, the bat expand its wings or parachutist open parachute as they landing to increase surface area and increase air resistance. So what is meant by air resistance? Air resistance. Air resistance, it's a type of friction force as an object moves through air. Air resistance, it is a type of friction force as an object moves through air. But water resistance, it is a type of friction force as an object moves through water. Water resistance, it is a type of friction force as an object moves through water. Ships, fish or dolphin has streamlined shapes. Why? To reduce water resistance. تاني مع بعض كده. Ships, fish or dolphin has streamlined shape to reduce water resistance. Again احنا اتفقنا what is meant by air resistance. It is a type of friction force as an object moves through air. طيب what is meant by water resistance. It is a type of friction force as an object moves through water.